Hello everyone and welcome back. In the last video I showed you how to work with the basic digitizing tools, the open and closed objects. There are some more which I will cover later, but we've just worked with random shapes that I created on the screen. Now when you're digitizing you probably want to work with an image that you can trace around. And of course there is also auto digitizing, which can save you a bit of time, save you clicking around all around the edges, because it can detect the shapes in the image and create the objects for you. It has its pros and cons, but let's have a look at how the tool works. Now, as I said, you need an image, so you need to load an image. Now I'm in the creator level. Designer Plus has a lot more options for working with images, which I will go into later, but let's get started just in the embroidery canvas part of the creator level, and of course you can do this in your Designer Plus level as well. So up the top here you've got a load image icon, and if we click on that, a dialog will open. Now I've already navigated to the bitmaps that come with the software. So with your software you do get some images to work with, and this is a good place to start because the images that they give you are all nice clean images which will work quite well, and I will talk about images that don't work so well in a later video. It's best if just to learn the tool with something that's going to work. So to navigate to this area where your inbuilt artwork is, you need to go to Users, Public Pictures, Bernina 9 Pictures, and Artwork. Then I've also gone to the bitmap folder. So if I go back one step to where you get to the artwork. Now I've got both versions of the software on this computer, so I may have more folders than you have showing up here. So in the creator level you may not have all of these folders. Don't worry too much about that. You should have the bitmap one, so you just need to click on that. So it has bitmap BMP underneath it. Now bitmaps are raster files. Raster files are made up of pixels. So bitmaps is one example, but PNG and JPEG are the other two examples of raster files, which are made up of pixels. These can be nice clean images like the ones they've given you, or you can have bitmaps that are not so clear, and depending on the resolution and the size of the image and all that sort of thing. So as I said, I will talk about those sorts of images in a later video. But to see all the images, down here, if you select an image, for instance this bear, the file name will show down here. So you click on it, the file name will show down here, and over here it's saying files of type. Now I've got all artwork files showing, so it will show in here whatever you've selected here. So it's showing any bitmaps, JPEGs, PNGs, which are the raster files. It will also show WMFs, EMFs, EPSs and CDRs. Now they're all vector type graphics, but what the software will do, it will handle those graphics in embroidery canvas, but it will convert them to a raster file as it opens them. So it will convert them to a pixel type image. They will be nice clean images though. So if you've got a vector graphic in any of those formats, you can open it here and you will have a nice clean raster file to work with as well. There is a drop down here, so you can select to only see bitmaps or only see JPEGs. So if I select JPEG here, you see I can't see anything here because none of those pictures were JPEGs, they were all bitmaps. So I need to go back to either select bitmaps, or the safest one is all artwork files, so that'll show any of those formats. So that should help you if you don't see the images straight away. Now you can just pick an image. I'm going to pick this rose, and you'll get a preview in the preview pane over here. And all you need to do is click open. Now I've got that dimmed, let me turn that off for a minute. and it will open, and you can zoom in with any of your zoom tools. So if we go 1:1, that will bring it in here. If I go to fit, it will fill the whole screen. Now I haven't got my colour film showing, so I'll show that, lock that in place. Your colour film, by the way, if it's taking up too much space on your screen, you can actually resize that. So if you hover over the boundary between the workspace and the colour film, you'll get this little double-sided arrow icon, and you can left click and drag that colour film a bit smaller if you need more real estate on your screen. Now you can see here I've got a little sailboat picture, and that's indicating that I have an image loaded into the workspace. If you don't see your image here, but you see, oh, sorry, before I go on, if that sailboat's not showing, you may have it in individual objects. So this little icon up here, show objects, if I click on that, it will actually show the image there. But when it's in when it's in the other option, it will show this holding placeholder, the little sailboat. So if either of those show up here, that means you have an image on your workspace. Now, if you have this showing here but no image, it may be because you have not got your show bitmap highlighted. So you can just come up here to the show bitmap little daisy icon and click on that, and if you click on it, it will hide it. It's not highlighted blue. Click on it again and it will come back. So you're not deleting it or anything, you're just hiding it or showing it. To the right of that, if it was a vector graphic, you can highlight or you can hide or show the vector graphics as well. So click on those icons to highlight them and your image will show. You have another option to dim the image. So when you're digitizing, if you can't see because you're digitizing on the black lines, for instance, you can dim the image to make it a little bit easier to work with. So that's here next to your show artistic view icon. There's a little white daisy, which is your dim artwork. If I click on that to highlight it, you can see that my image has dimmed. I'll bring it back to full color now by clicking on it again. Okay, so we've got our image, and as I said before, you could take your open object or closed object. Let's just do an open object for this little curly bit here. I could take my open object and get my outline tool and make sure I've got black as my color selected, and I can zoom in with my mouse and I could digitize that by left clicking here. Then it's a curve, so I'm going to right click, right click, right click, right click, and I'm just doing a single run. And as I said, it's a bit hard to see on the black because I'm digitizing on that dark color, but I could have dimmed it. And I'm going to left click to finish and hit my enter button, and if I dim the image and zoom in, you can see that I have digitized that black line. To save you having to digitize around all the objects and all the lines, which would take quite some time for an image like this, then you can use the Auto Digitizer. Now, it has some limitations and I'll work through those with you, but it does save a lot of time. So I'll undo that line I just digitized. You can see it here in the color block here in the color film, but if I undo, that will remove it. Okay, so you can always undo or redo up here as many times as you like. So if you've done 10 things, you can undo 10 things. All right, so I'll bring back the full color of the image and zoom to fit because I've moved around. Okay, now with the auto digitizing tools, they're all in their own toolbox. So if we click on the Auto Digitize toolbox arrow here to expand it, we can see that we can insert our artwork here as well as using this icon up here. So it's entirely they both do the same thing. They both open that dialog where you can search for your image and load it. There are some other options here. Crop background, adjust bitmap, touch up bitmap. Now this is a really clean bitmap, so there's nothing I need to do to it, none of these tools, but they're also grayed out. That's because the image is not selected. So if I select the image, oops, escape, I still had my digitizing tool activated, so I need to come up here to the select object tool and then click on the image. When you select it, you'll get little handles around it, little black dots around it. That means it's selected, and it will be highlighted in the color film. It's not really obvious here. If I go to the image, you can see a blue line around it showing it's selected. Now these tools are available. I'm not going to go into those today because there's a lot of information there, things you can do to your bitmap if it's not a nice clean image like this. There's some other tools, Color Photo Stitch and Photo Snap. They're for working with photographic images, and I'll cover those at another time as well. The next tool is the Prepare the Bitmap tool. Now you can click on that and prepare the bitmap here, and then choose which of the auto digitizing tools you want to use. Or when you click on, if you don't do that, when you click on these auto digitize tools, the Prepare Bitmap dialog will open anyway. So it's entirely up to you whether you click on this first, prepare your bitmap. You might want to prepare the bitmap and then go away and do something else and then come back and auto digitize. I'm just going to click on the first option, the auto digitize option, which will do the same thing. It will open the Prepare Bitmap dialog. And here it is. And it says up here, Prepare Bitmap. Here's the original, and here's what the processed bitmap looks like on the right. And as you can see, they're identical in this case because we had a very clean image with very defined lines of demarcation between the colours. If I zoom in, and you can zoom in this dialog as well just by using your mouse wheel, rolling it. If I zoom in, you can see that the black lines, although they're all jagged because they're the pixels that we're zoomed right into, there's a clear demarcation between this colour here and the black, and then between the black and this other red here. There's no fuzzy little shaded pixels along here that might be slightly different colours. It's a very clean cut-off line between the two colours. So the software was able to really easily pick up those colours and list them. And it found 6 colours. We can tell that because it says down here, number of colours 6. And over here, it shows the colours it's picked up. The first one is white. It's always hard to see the white, but if it's the first one, it'll look like there's a blank square there. When you hover over them, they'll highlight blue. You can actually select these colours and do things with them. But for now, I'm just going to go through the process. And as I said, I will go into all the finer details when you've got an image that doesn't work so well. So there are things you can do to make it work. Okay, so here are the 6 colours, white and black. White was the background. If I move this dialog out of the way, you can see this image had a white background. Then we've got the black, the green, the dark green, the light green, and the 2 different red shades. So there's nothing else I need to do to this because it's picked everything up and found it fine. So I don't need to adjust anything down here. You can adjust if you've got too many colours. You can bring this slider back down to get rid of, as I said, if the design was a bit messy, you can reduce the colours and you can reduce the details here. But for the first one you do, pick a nice clean image and you won't need to do anything. And then you can go OK. A new dialog will open, which is your digitizing dialog. And it will have all those colours that it picked up listed here. So it's got the 2 reds and the 2 greens, and it's called those, it's detected that they need to be a fill stitch because they're large areas. They don't need to be anything else other than a fill stitch. You can change this if you want to. These are all drop-down menus. So the options you've got are fill, details, or omit. And as I said, they should be fills. So because they're large areas, we'll leave those as they are. The black, they've realised that it's only a thin area. So it's chosen to make it a detail. Now, that's fine. Over on the right-hand side, you can decide what your detail should be. They have selected a satin fill, and I'm going to leave it on that. The reason being, if I zoom in, you've got the choices are a satin fill, a centerline, or a satin line. The line width of these areas varies a little bit in the number of pixels. It's not too bad. We could try a satin line. I might try both for you. Let me have a look. I can pan in this. I don't know if I can. No. I'll go zoom in here. You might want the little swirly bits here not as heavy as a satin line. So we'll leave it for what it is for the moment, and I'll come back and we can do it again with a different option here. So I'll leave it on satin fill. The next option is outlines, and that is if you want to create an outline around your image that wasn't there before. You can choose to have an outline, and you can choose a colour for the outline. You can also create a border around the edge and choose a colour for that. We'll leave those options for the moment as well. Up the top here, it's got the matching method. Now you can choose whether you want to use the bitmap colours that were in the image, or you can add thread chart colours to the palette. And so let's just go to the thread chart option. And you can see here that when I do that, I'll just go back. So look, you can see Floriani Poly because that's what's in my thread chart. And I have another video about thread charts. I'll try and find it and put the link in the description. But we'll go back to the Add Bitmap. When it's on Add Bitmap, it just gives you the RGB colours of the image. It still finds the colours, but it may help to have the thread colours of your thread collection showing here. Okay, and the last one, number 6, was the white, and it has realised that it's a background and chosen to leave it out. Now, if you want the white there, you will have to drop down the menu and change it to I will change it to a fill in this case, but I'm going to omit it as well. Most times you will want to omit the background. One time you wouldn't want to omit the background is if you have white in the actual image itself. So if you had something with eyes, with whites in the eyes, if you omit that colour altogether, you will lose the objects for the eyes as well. So you're actually better off deleting the background later and leaving that colour in. So, but we'll leave it on omit for the now. So once you've checked all through that and you're happy with what you've got, you can go OK. And there we go. The software has created all the objects. So if I look, what am I in? I'm in individual objects in my colour film. So there's lots of objects there. Now this is what happens with, if I zoom in, with auto digitizing, in that the size of the object will determine the fill type. So they've actually filled these smaller areas with a satin fill, and this larger area here with a step fill. So if we look down to our fills here, we've got our step fill as our first option. The next option is a satin fill, and the next option is a raised satin fill, and then we've got our fancy fill and pattern fill. So there's all sorts of different fills you could use. The software generally with auto digitizing just chooses satin or step fill, and well, it does. And so you may not want all this variation in the types of fill, but this will stitch out reasonably well. The other thing with version 9 is that it does automatically apply a 0.4 pull compensation to the objects, which means that it creates a little bit more overlap than would normally happen. That's because if you remember back to the image, let me just undo back to the image. Okay, so this is the prepared image. And you can see that these edges aren't, the pixels have disappeared, but these aren't smooth edges like two straight lines. They vary in width. But what the software sees when it's prepared the image is the red object is going to stop right on the edge of the black object on all sides, on all edges. So if you don't have a good pull compensation, then when you stitch out, the objects might not actually butt up against each other because the fabric moves, even if you've got the best stabilizer and a nice firm fabric, you can still get gaps. So to overcome this, the software applies a pull compensation. And in the case of auto digitizing, it is quite a strong pull compensation. So if I redo to bring back those stitches and I go out of true view, let's hide the image for a minute. And I'll deselect because it's all selected. Let me just zoom out and deselect the whole design and zoom right in. So you can see here that the red stitches are going right up to the middle of the black stitches. So there is quite a bit of overlap there. It'll be more pronounced in some areas because it depends on the direction of the stitching. But they have allowed for some overlap. So you could try and stitch this out. If you are okay with this, you could stitch this out as is and you would get a reasonable result. Let's bring back the true view. But as I said, you might not be happy with the actual fills. You can change all these fills now though, because you've got them made. So you can select these satin fills. So let me select that object. I'll go out of true view so you can see that I've selected that object there. We have something in the software called object properties, and that's what allows us to change all the information about each object. So if you right click on the object you've selected, so you select it, it gets the little black handles around it, and if you're in design view it'll turn pink. You can right click on it and go to the object properties. And here it's automatically gone to the fill stitch tab because it knows it's a fill and a satin fill. It's telling you what this is. The satin spacing is the manual 0.4, so each of those stitches are 0.4 of a millimetre next to each other, and it's normal satin. And you can do a satin special, which I'll talk about in another video. But if I don't like satin, I can drop this menu down here and I could choose any of these other type fills. So I could change this to a step fill. Now I'll move that aside. And I'll put this back in true view. So you can see now that that's it. Let me zoom in if I can to that spot and move it across, or move this across to the other side. There we go. So you can see that's a satin fill, this is a step fill. I can drop this menu down here and change it to a step fill. And when I hit apply or OK, it will change to a step fill as well. So you could go around and change all these fills. I'll go into the full details of the options in the object properties in another video. But as you can see, it's a quick, easy way to get your objects created, and then you can edit those rather than having to click around every object. Alright, let's start a new design and look at some of the other tools. Or actually, I'll just undo to where we get right back to loading the image. Let me show the image. I'll just undo again. That's got rid of it. Bring it back. Okay. So we just did the auto digitize. There's an instant auto digitize which will bypass those prepare bitmap options. So if I click on that while the image is selected, it will automatically go straight to the digitized object. And in this, you will get the same result with this image as you did with the other image, because it was a nice clean image. So you haven't got that option where you can choose to omit the white color. It has omitted it for you. There's no white color. If I go out of True View, let's just hide the artwork and go out of True View. There is no white around this. It has omitted it automatically. So you don't get those dialogues that allow you to make those options, choose those options. But if it's a nice clean image and you're in a hurry, instant auto digitize will work. Okay. Show bitmap. All right. So let's undo that. I'm just making sure that the bitmap hasn't been prepared. The next options, if you're wanting to have a little bit more control, let's go zoom to fit, is the magic wand options. So the first magic wand, if I left click on that, nothing will happen because it needs to prepare this artwork. So if you've already prepared the bitmap, you will be able to use the magic wand, but until it's prepared, you need to do that first. So you can see I've got that little funny icon saying no, you can't do it, but if you keep going across to your image and left clicking, it will come up with these dialogues again. So we'll go OK, and it's prepared. And now you can see as you hover over the image, those areas are actually highlighting with a hatched area. If I zoom right in, you can see now what I meant about the image edges of the areas butting up against each other and not overlapping in any way. Okay, so with the magic wand, you can actually just click on an area and it will digitize it. Now it's choosing the color for you from the color of the image, and it is choosing a type of stitch. In this case, it did a fill stitch. So you can see I had outline selected there, down here, but it did not affect it anyway. The magic wand is working purely off the image. So if I select this area, it's also going to be a fill, and this one, and this one, and so on. And you can go on. Actually, it's making them all fills. So if you wanted satin, you would have to, let's see if we can choose satin down here, satin outline, and choose this spot here. And yes, because I actually chose satin, I've overridden the software, I think. Let me choose a big area and see if that will do that. Satin, this one here. Yes. So if you choose satin down here, it will override the software and create a satin fill. And so you can go on and just select each area. Now that's the black outline. Let's see what it does with that, because I've got satin fill chosen. And yes, it's done a satin fill. It's small, but it's a satin fill. Now, if I undo that and choose satin outline down here, let's see what happens then. So I've got to get that hatch showing. And it more or less looks the same. Because it's such a small area, it's just done the satin stitch. The reason it looks a bit funny here is because all the stitches are going at the one angle. That's one of the issues with auto digitizing with the magic wand. But that's a quick way to, if you've got a nice clean image, to digitize and have a little bit more control over the fill, and you could actually even, I think, choose a color. So if I choose this purple and the fill type, the fill, and come with the magic wand and click in this area here, it's actually filled it with green still. So it's still working off the image. So you can't choose a color, but you can choose a fill type. All right, let's undo all of that. And bring the image back. So I need to redo once. There we go. And select the image. Right. Now the Magic Wand block digitizing does allow you to put stitch angles in as you go. So if I select that one, and again the image has to be prepared, so I'll click on it. I'll go OK. And for instance, let's do this area here. So what it's going to do is put angles in around, so that instead of having all the stitches go in the one direction, if I click on it and come off, you can see now that the stitches are radiating across the object. So it's a much nicer finish for a shaped object like that. So rather than have all the angles in the same direction, like with the Magic Wand, you can use the Magic Wand block digitizing. Now I could go back to the Magic Wand now, and I will get a fill stitch all in the one direction for this object, because you can swap between the tools as you're digitizing. The Magic Wand fill without holes is if you had an object and it had polka dots on it, for instance. Say this leaf had little round spots. If you clicked on the background, actually, we'll use the background as an example. So this white background cuts off at the black leaf. But if I wanted white stitching under the whole design, I could use the Magic Wand fill without holes. So if I click on that and click on that background, you can see I've got white stitching over the whole design. Now it's on the top because it's the last thing I digitized. I can actually move that to the underneath with this tool. And so now it's underneath, but there are no holes in it where these objects are. That can be useful sometimes if the other objects in the design are very small and you don't want any holes underneath it. It's not always a good idea to leave gaps where you're having different colours on top of each other. Sometimes you need the stitching to continue all the way across. So that's what the Magic Wand fill without holes is. I'll undo that. And then there's a Magic Wand Centerline. So if I move right into this black swirly bit, or all the black outline actually is all joined together, so it's going to use it all. I could use the Magic Wand Centerline, and that will actually just create a running stitch through the center of, as close as it can be to the center of that outline. So if I click on that, it's created the running stitch there. Now it's really hard to see, so I'm going to change it to reds, orange actually, so you can see it. So I'll select that and change it to orange, or yellow orange. There we go. So you can see now that you've just got a running stitch. The problem with that in this image is that you are going to get gaps between. So if let's digitize. Oh, here we've got two colors next to each other. I'll hide the image. Once this stitches, even with that 0.4 pull compensation working on the auto digitizing, you're going to get gaps on either side of that center line, and you've got little places where it stops and starts as well. So it's not always the best option, but if you only wanted the outline, you could probably work with that. So we could delete these two objects. I'm just selecting them in the color film and deleting them. You could end up with just an image like this, and there is some editing you could do to join these together. As you can see, there's some lots of tools that can make your digitizing a lot quicker. You can also combine two types of digitizing. So if I undo this and undo that, okay, bring the image back. So I might auto-digitize parts of the design, and then I can go down to the Digitize toolbox and choose my closed object, and I could actually digitize this object here, for instance. So I would then choose my fill, my color, let's just choose this green for it, and then I can start clicking around with my left and right clicks. Now, as I said, with manual digitizing, you can overlap. So I can start my object here. Manual digitizing will have a pull compensation of 0.2 by default. So a little bit of overlap is always a good idea. So there's nothing to stop you from doing both manual and auto digitizing in the one design. And enter. So there's my manually digitized object, and you can see with the pull compensation it's actually gone right over that black part there. And then when you auto digitize the black, let's block digitize the black satin. So I'll get the block digitizing, come over here, get this hatched black area. And as you can see, even though I did block digitizing, it hasn't seemed to handle the angles. It's a bit better. It's handled the angles a little bit better, but they're still not perfect, but not too bad. So my suggestion now is for you to go and get yourself an image and try all these tools out and see what they do for you. If you've got any questions, just put them in the comments below, and then I can do a little video to answer your question. We've got lots more to learn, so there's going to be lots more videos. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss them. Thank you very much.